He wasn't just a landlord. He was a tyrant. Everyone in our building knew it. He owned several apartments across the city, and he treated tenants not like people, but like his personal ATM machines. He would barge in without notice, snoop through belongings and slap us with random fees. A scratch on the floor? $100 fine. A neighbor complained about noise, even if it wasn't us? Another fine. He had a new excuse every month. And the worst part? He demanded cash. Always cash. No receipts, no paperwork, he'd say, smirking. It's easier this way. If you don't like it, move out. There's a line of people who'd love your place. We all hated him. But what could we do? The city was expensive and apartments were hard to find. So, like everyone else, I kept quiet. I paid the rent. I swallowed my pride. Until one day he went too far. It started with a leak in the ceiling. Water dripped for days, ruining my books, soaking the carpet. I called him again and again, but he ignored me. When he finally showed up, he blamed me. Said I must have broken something, and fined me $300. I lost it. This is insane. I shouted. He just smirked, shrugged, and pocketed the cash. That's when I realized he didn't see us as tenants. He saw us as prey. A week later, he kicked out one of my neighbors, a young couple with a baby. He claimed they violated the contract, but everyone knew the truth. They had refused to pay one of his fake fees. He kept their deposit, 2 months' rent, then changed the locks. Watching them leave with bags in their hands, the baby crying in the hallway, something inside me snapped. Enough was enough. That night, I reached out to the other tenants. At first, people were scared to talk. What if he finds out? They whispered. But anger is contagious, and soon the stories poured out. One woman had been charged $200 for walking too loudly. Another man had his utilities shut off until he paid a bogus maintenance fee. Every single one of us had been cheated, lied to, humiliated. And as we compared notes, something became clear. This wasn't just bad management. It was a full-blown scam. He was taking thousands every month in unreported cash. No receipts. No records. No taxes. He thought he was untouchable. But he wasn't. Not anymore. I suggested we start documenting everything. Every visit. Every text message. Every so-called fee. At first, people were hesitant. But slowly they began sending me photos of receipts, screenshots of messages, even videos of him barging into apartments. Piece by piece we built a case. The more we dug, the uglier it got. He wasn't just scamming us, he was hiding money from the government, laundering it through fake repairs, even harassing tenants who tried to leave bad reviews online. One guy, Mark, told us the landlord had threatened him. If you talk, you'll regret it. Remember, I know where you live. That was his mistake. Because now we weren't just angry tenants. We were a team. And we weren't going to let him keep getting away with it. The plan came together slowly, carefully. We would let him think everything was normal. Keep paying cash. Keep nodding along. Keep pretending to be afraid. Meanwhile, we'd prepare the trap. And when it finally snapped shut, he wouldn't just lose our money. He would lose everything. For weeks we lived a double life. On the surface, we were the same tenants as before. Quiet, obedient, cash in hand whenever the landlord came knocking. But behind the scenes, every one of us was working. Documenting. Collecting. Preparing. I bought a cheap hidden camera pen online. Whenever he came into my apartment, I clicked it on and let it record. Others did the same, phones tucked into jacket pockets, recording apps running during inspections. We captured his words, his threats, his smug little lines. No receipt. Don't ask again. This is my building. My rules. You don't like it? Get out. We gathered screenshots of messages where he demanded payment through shady apps or told people to leave extra cash in an envelope. We even tracked how many tenants he forced out illegally, pocketing their deposits without ever giving them a chance to argue. It was all falling into place. The more evidence we collected, the more fearless we became. It felt strange, like we were living in a spy thriller. At night, we met quietly in the basement laundry room, sharing files on a laptop, whispering like conspirators. The air buzzed with energy, with something I hadn't felt in months: hope. And then came the final piece. One of the tenants, a woman named Clara, worked part-time at a law firm. She wasn't a lawyer, but she knew enough to point us in the right direction. "You've got him," she whispered, eyes gleaming. "Tax evasion. Fraud. Harassment. If this goes public, he's finished." But Clara warned us, we had to be careful. If he caught wind of our plan too early, he'd disappear. He had money, connections. He could vanish before anyone touched him. So, we decided to hit him all at once. First, we compiled everything into a single massive file. Every video, every screenshot, every witness statement. We made 3 copies. One for the police, one for the tax authorities, and one as backup in case he tried to claim it was fake. Then we set the bait. It happened on a rainy Thursday evening. The landlord stormed into the building, demanding money from 2 tenants at once. "Late fees," he barked, waving his hand dismissively. When one tenant protested, he leaned in close and hissed, "Pay up, or I'll have you on the street by tomorrow." That was when I pulled out my phone. Not hidden. Not subtle. I held it right in front of him and hit record. "What are you doing?" he snapped. "Documenting," I said calmly. "In case anyone needs proof." His face went pale. For the first time he didn't look smug. He looked nervous. He shoved past me, stormed into his car, and sped away. That was the signal. We sent the files. To the tax office. To the housing authority. And finally to the police. The waiting was the hardest part. Days passed. Then a week. The landlord tried to act like nothing had changed, but he was rattled. He snapped at tenants, yelled louder than usual, even threatened to raise the rent, across the board. And then it happened. 2 black cars pulled up outside the building. Men in suits stepped out, followed by uniformed officers. They walked past us without a word and went straight for the landlord's apartment. We didn't hear everything, but we heard enough. Raised voices. Papers being read aloud. The landlord shouting, "This is a mistake." Then the sound of handcuffs clicking. When they let him out, he looked smaller somehow. Deflated. The man who had tormented us for months, who strutted through the halls like a king, was now being shoved into the back of a police car. But the best part was yet to come. A week later, Clara got the news. Not only had he been arrested for tax fraud, but the government was seizing his assets. His apartments, his accounts, everything. He wouldn't just lose us as tenants. He would lose all of it. We gathered in the courtyard that night, the whole building, passing around cheap champagne someone had bought. For the first time, neighbors who barely spoke were laughing together, hugging, cheering. We weren't victims anymore. We were free. But as I raised my glass, I couldn't help thinking, this wasn't just revenge. It was justice. And it had only happened because we stood together. And as for the landlord? His reign of terror was over. But his punishment had only just begun. The night the landlord was arrested, the building was buzzing like a hive. Nobody went to bed early. Windows were lit up across all the floors, tenants leaning out to watch the black cars drive off with the man who had ruled over us for so long. It was surreal. For months, maybe years, he had acted untouchable. He barked orders, took cash without shame, pocketed deposits like they were loose change, and dared anyone to stand against him. And now he was gone, shoved into the back of a police car like any common criminal. But that was just the beginning. The very next morning, the story hit the local papers. A headline screamed across the front page. "Slumlord arrested on fraud and tax evasion charges." His photo was there too, not the proud, smug face we were used to seeing in the hallways, but a booking photo. Cold lighting, tired eyes, and the faintest hint of fear. The man who once strutted through our building looked ordinary, small. By noon, TV crews were outside, shoving microphones in our faces. Some tenants refused to speak, still too scared of what might happen. Others, Clara especially, stepped up proudly. "He thought he could rob us and walk away laughing," she told one reporter. But we fought back. And now he's paying the price. The cameras loved her. Within days the story was everywhere. Not just local news, national coverage. People across the country watched, shaking their heads in disbelief, and cheering for the tenants who stood together. For the first time, we weren't ashamed of where we lived. We were proud. The landlord didn't stay in jail forever, of course. He had money stashed somewhere, enough to post bail. But when he showed up in court, he wasn't the same man. His expensive suit looked wrinkled. His hair was messy, his swagger gone. The charges against him filled pages. Tax evasion, fraud, harassment, illegal eviction practices, extortion. It was a mountain, and every piece of evidence came from us. Videos, audio recordings, text messages, witnesses. Every time his lawyer tried to argue, the prosecution brought out another file, another recording, another tenant willing to speak under oath. I'll never forget the moment one of the videos was played in the courtroom. The one where he shouted at Mrs. Lee, a quiet elderly woman on the second floor. On screen, he towered over her, waving a piece of paper and snarling, "I'll have you on the street tomorrow if you don't pay up." The courtroom went silent. Even the judge's face hardened. By the second week it was obvious he was done. The financial side hit him hardest. The government froze his accounts. Investigators dug into his records and uncovered years of unpaid taxes, hidden income, and shady cash-only deals. Every property he owned was seized. His cars, his vacation house, even the luxury watch he loved to flaunt, gone. And the debts. Oh, the debts. Without his steady stream of cash, creditors came crawling out of every corner. Lawsuits piled up. The same arrogance that made him rich was now burying him alive. I remember the day Clara announced it in the courtyard. "They're bankrupting him," she said, smiling. "He's losing everything." The cheers that followed shook the old walls of our building. But the best part wasn't just watching him fall. It was what we got back. The court ordered restitution. Every tenant who had been scammed out of a deposit, every illegal fee he had charged, every unfair eviction he had forced, the money was returned. It didn't happen overnight, of course. Legal processes dragged on. But slowly checks started arriving in the mail. I still remember holding mine in my hands. It wasn't a fortune, but it was justice. Proof that standing up together had been worth it. And then came the changes. With the landlord gone, a housing authority took over management of the building. Repairs that had been ignored for years were suddenly scheduled. Broken elevators were fixed. Leaks patched. For the first time, the place felt like a home, not a trap. Months later, the trial reached its end. We all gathered in the courthouse for the final hearing. The landlord stood there, head bowed, as the judge read the verdict. Guilty on all counts. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. The courtroom erupted. Some people gasped. Others cheered quietly. I just sat there, stunned, watching him being led away in handcuffs again. It wasn't just prison. It was the weight of everything he had done crashing down on him. The power, the arrogance, the cruelty, all stripped away. He was just another man in an orange jumpsuit, destined to spend over a decade behind bars. And we were free. Life moved on. The story faded from the news. New tenants came to live in the building, never knowing the nightmare we once endured. But those of us who had been there, we remembered. Sometimes, when I walk past the spot where the police car waited that night, I think about how different things could have been. If we hadn't stood together. If we had kept paying quietly, too scared to fight back. But we did fight. And we won. The landlord lost his money, his power, his freedom. And we gained something priceless. The knowledge that even ordinary people, when united, could bring down a tyrant. And that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all.